Hello, everyone. All right. How are you guys doing today? I have had a totally crazy day. I am kind of reeling here a little bit. We are in the process. Can you guys hear me okay? Someone nod your head if you can hear me okay. Yeah, you can hear me? Yep. Okay, thanks, guys. We are in the process of doing an international adoption, of adopting a little girl from Thailand, and today was the crazy day when I had to get all the official documents together and get them FedExed out to the State Department in Washington, D.C. So it has been a crazy day. Now we get to talk about fun stuff. So, welcome to tonight. This is our final of our 3 free January healing classes. And this is a fun one because we're going to take everything we've learned from the last 2 weeks and now we're going to put it together and show you how to apply it to a really practical topic. So this should be a really useful class to see how all these principles really come together and really function when we have something practical that we want to deal with. So let's go ahead and get started. So I want to just ask you guys, think about for a second, how are you feeling about all this? How are you feeling about this new definition, this new perspective of healing? Anyone want to share? Anyone having thoughts or questions or things they want to share before we get in any deeper? If you do, just unmute yourself and we can chat here for a second. We've taken 2 weeks now to look at this whole concept that our body really is a mirror. It's really guiding us and teaching us and helping us get where we want to go. It isn't our enemy. It is our support system. It is our teacher. It is our guru. And as we can learn to work with it, then we can learn to heal on a whole new level. And you guys, this is part of life. No one is immune to this. And the reason no one is immune to this is because this is what life is about, right? Life is about growing and changing and letting go of the things that are holding us back and embracing whole new parts of ourselves and becoming a better person. And all of this transformation, that's the whole point of life. And our bodies are just one of our greatest tools in being able to do that. And you know, this morning I found myself, I had to take an hour this morning and I had to stop and I had to deal with some of my own stuff. I had some stuff going on with my body that I could feel just the pressure and that there was stuff that I needed to deal with. And I had to take some serious looks at some emotional stuff going on, some physical stuff going on, and stop today and take some time, listen to what my body was trying to tell me, pay attention to those things, and give my body what it needed. And it's just, it really, as we learn to do that, it's just kind of an ongoing part of life. It doesn't become such of a stress, it doesn't become such of a big deal, but it can literally just become part of how we live. And then these things that our body does, whether it's pain that creeps up or not feeling good or, you know, anything that creeps up, we can just take a moment and stop and go, okay, I need to pay attention. My body's talking to me. What do I need to hear? What do I need to see? What do I need to do? And that can just become a way of living so that we really are living in a way that we're honoring and supporting our body, and our body is honoring and supporting us. So what we are going to do today is we're going to take, so we've talked about the 4 keys of healing. So if you've missed any of the previous classes, you'll want to go back and grab those. But the first class, we talked about the 4 keys of healing. And this is a whole perspective to address whole body, permanent, transformative healing. And then in the second class, we talked about the 4 cornerstones. And those are the principles that help us to eat in harmony with our divinely designed bodies. Now today what we're going to do is we're going to take both of those and we're going to put them together and show you how this applies to weight. And the reason we're going to do this is because weight is probably one of the most pervasive, most focused on, most frustration-inducing things out there in the health world. People are Googling weight loss and searching for weight loss solutions by the millions. It's that big of a frustrating thing. But is it working? You know, is what we're doing working? Is this getting better? It isn't. It isn't getting better. And as we talk about how to apply these principles, you're going to see really clearly why what we're doing isn't working, and also what we can do instead. And we'll get into the real practical application of this. So I want you to think about this. When you think about how you or others you know, or the world, the internet world in general, looks at weight, if someone wants to lose weight, what are the main emotions that are behind that desire to lose weight? Like, what is driving that? Oh, I want to lose weight. What's behind that? If you stop and look what's behind that, there is a feeling of force, and there is a feeling of frustration, and there is a feeling of desperation that is driving that desire to lose weight. Or, you know, all these same principles would actually apply too if you found yourself in a situation where you actually needed to gain weight and your body was struggling to gain weight. It applies the same. But since more people find themselves in the situation of wanting to lose weight, I'm going to talk about it from that perspective. But can you, if you just stop and think about that, can you feel like this just overwhelming frustration and force? It's like, I am tired of this. I want it to go away. I am going to make it go away. I am going to find a way to make this go away. It's just, it is such a feeling that is coming from this just controlling point. And I know this feeling well. I'm going to tell you a story about me and one of my experiences in a little bit of where I felt that exact emotion and what happened because of that. But that is the main feeling that we tend to have around losing weight. It's force, frustration, and desperation. Now, here's the flip side of how we can approach this. We can approach weight from a perspective of support and trust. And I'm going to walk you through that today of how these different ways work and how we can shift into a perspective of support and trust. Now, let's look at why we tend to fall into the first category, why that's such an easy place to be. And then as we talk about that, it's going to show us how to shift into the other approach. So when we want to lose weight, if we are frustrated with our weight, most of the time we feel that our body has betrayed us, right? It has done something that we've been told is unhealthy, it's unattractive, it's bad. This is a bad thing. And so we feel like our body has betrayed us. Something is wrong and we need to correct it. And where that always leads is to some kind of diet. Now that can be a diet of changing what you eat. It can be a diet that involves, the physical workout part to try to burn more calories. It can be meal replacements. There's a whole bunch of forms that can take, but we are going into some prescribed program to try to literally correct what is wrong with our body, right? That's what we're trying to do. So let's show you the 3 reasons this doesn't work. we have plenty of proof that this does not work long term. It sometimes works short term, but the statistics of how many people regain weight that they have lost is overwhelming, like way more, vast majority of people regain. So why? Why is that? When we go to all the hard work to diet and sometimes we're actually successful in losing weight, why does that not stick? Okay, so here's 3 reasons dieting, no matter what form you want to put that in, doesn't work. Okay, the first is this whole thing of calories in, calories out is a false principle. And the 4 cornerstones are what show you that this is a false principle. I mean, it's a logical concept. It is a logical concept. We eat calories, our body burns calories. Therefore, if we can simply get the body burning more calories than it's eating, it's going to lose weight. That's a very, very logical way to look at weight, but it doesn't work. When you look at the 4 cornerstones, it doesn't work. And this is the reason it doesn't work. We talked last week about how every food that goes into your body, whether it has 0 calories or 1,000,000 calories, every food that goes into your body changes your body function as it goes through, right? And we looked at artificial sugar, and we showed you how something that had 0 calories would actually shift your entire metabolism into gaining weight. Do you guys remember that? How we showed you how that worked because it changed how leptin was perceived in your brain? So that's something that's 0 calories, but it's shifting body function in a way that works against you with weight. And so the calories in, calories out does not work because it does not look at the form of the food and how the form of the food changes the function of the human body. It does not even acknowledge that as anything that's even going on. And it's such a huge thing that's going on. One of my other examples I'll talk about in a little bit. We'll show you how that happened once with my body. But it's a huge thing. And so we cannot, you guys, I want you all just to raise your hand and pledge that for the rest of your life, you will never count calories again, because it's just one of those principles that when you put it up against the 4 cornerstones, it just doesn't work. We have to look at how food affects our body. Is it in harmony with our body? Meaning, does it support normal body function? Or is it out of harmony with the human body? And is it disrupting normal human function? That is a much more viable way to learn how to support your body in a healthy weight than ever worrying about calories. Okay, so that's problem number 1. Here's problem number 2 with dieting. Your body is a mirror. Your body is a reflector. It's reflecting something back at you. And wherever your weight is at the moment is a perfect reflection of what is going on inside of you, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. It's a perfect reflection. The concept that something is wrong in your body and needs to be fixed is not accurate. Your weight is an absolutely perfect reflection for you at this very moment. So if we come in with some outside diet and we do some program or some short-term thing and we actually lose some weight, did we do anything that changed what the body was actually reflecting back to us in the first place? No. That original signal, that original message that was coming out from your body is still there, because whatever it was that your body was trying to reflect back to you is still present. A diet doesn't ever erase that. And so the reflection will come back. You can be guaranteed, because your body's reflecting something to you. So we can't ever come in from an outside perspective of diets, try to mediate the human body function if we don't change whatever it is that our body was reflecting to us in the first place. The mirror image will return. It will just automatically return. So that's reason number 2 that diets don't work. And here's reason number 3. Your body is designed to protect you. Okay, so let's talk for a second about what fat really is in the human body. So last week when we did our analysis of the keto diet, we talked about the fact that the human body has a primary metabolic sequence where it burns carbohydrates for fuel. That's its preferred method. Okay, it never deviates from that unless it has to. So preferred method for the human body is to burn carbohydrates, but it has a backup method of being able to burn fat. Now, the reason it has that backup method of being able to burn fat is so that you can survive. If you think about history, until very, very recently, the food supply has always been variable. Always. There were good years and bad years. There were feasts and there were famines. There were summer and there was winter. There were hurricanes that would come through and wipe out the food supply, even in a tropical location. The food supply has always been variable, always. And the human body is designed to protect you against that. So if you have a time of feast and you have more resources than you need, your body goes, good, let's prepare for an emergency. It's emergency preparedness in the very most physiological sense. Your body says, let's prepare for an emergency, and it puts fuel away as fat, because that is a way that it can burn fuel when it switches over to that secondary metabolic sequence in an emergency. It has a way to use that as a backup system when no carbohydrates are available. So fat is one way of your body telling you that it loves you. It's protecting you. It's its system of keeping you alive, literally. Literally, that's what it's for. It's to keep you alive. So in the past, in past eras of history where the food supply was variable, those who had a better fat storing metabolism survived better. Think about that for a second. We live in a world now where we envy these people that are like super bone skinny no matter what they do. In all other eras of history, that's how you become extinct. That is not a good thing in any kind of emergency. So that has never been the preferred way to live. Only in our modern era of this overabundance of food could we ever glorify a skinny body. Because a skinny body is dangerous. The instant something goes wrong, you're going to go. You're not going to survive. So if you are one of these people who has a tendency to carry more weight, you simply have perhaps come from a genetic line that was better at surviving. So first, pat yourself on the back and congratulate yourself that your body's good at surviving, okay? Because that's what your body's trying to do. It's trying to protect you. Does that make sense? So when our body puts on weight, we have activated a protective mechanism somehow. Now, sometimes now we are activating that inappropriately, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But just stop and recognize that before you get mad at your body for holding on more weight than you would like it to, first just remember you have activated a protective mechanism, not one that's out to hurt you, not one that's out to make your life hard, not one that's out to make you look fat. This is a protective mechanism that is built into the human body for a very good reason. The other way that our body protects us with fat is, if you think about it, fat, if you are a bigger person, you have a deeper level of protection from the physical world around you. Can you think about that? Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay, there are a lot of us that do not feel safe in this world. Okay, there are a lot of things in this world that make us, well, that's a non-healthy way to look at it. There are a lot of things in this world that tend to create feelings of fear in us, and we tend to not feel safe. And honestly, putting on weight sometimes is an emotional protection, literally, that your body is building in because it feels at risk. This is very common when people are dealing with abuse, when people are in situations with pornography, when people are in a situation where they are feeling very vulnerable or too visible, like they're being exposed in the world. When those kinds of emotions are going on, it is very common for the physical body to actually increase weight, because the underlying emotion inside of us is we need to be protected. We're feeling exposed, vulnerable, unprotected. And one of the ways that gets reflected in the human body is increased weight. And you may want to just think about that and see if you've seen times or situations where you've seen that happen. But it's not at all uncommon. So the body's protective mechanisms can go in for physical reasons, or they can kick in for emotional reasons as well. But if you look at all three of those, if you look at the fact that the calories in, calories out is literally not a viable biochemistry principle. And if you look at the fact that our body is a reflection, and you look at the fact that our body is trying to protect us, can you see why dieting actually works against everything your body is trying to do for you? We are opposing all of the divine systems that are trying to function in our behalf. And so it doesn't work. And that's why that approach does not work long term. So what's the flip? The flip is to go back to this concept of support and trust. Okay? If we can see our body that way, that your weight at this very moment, whatever it is, even if it is 500 pounds, your weight at this moment is a perfect reflection of what your body is trying to do for you. It is perfect. Now, that doesn't mean it has, just because it's a perfect reflection of the moment, doesn't mean it needs to stay. It doesn't need to stay, because once you get the message that the body is trying to send and you can address the underlying issue, then the reflection no longer needs to be there. Your body doesn't need to reflect that because it's simply trying to bring it to your attention. And so once we can meet the body's needs, whether they be physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, once we can meet those needs, the need for that reflection ceases. So we can look at it from a concept of, first, I trust my body. I trust that there's a reason my weight is exactly where it is right now. I trust that. And then second, what can I do to support my body so that it is getting what it needs? And then I will let my body take care of the weight. And it will. It will, because the need for that reflection will fade. So here's the question. If you are ever struggling with weight, and you guys, this would apply to anything. So we're talking about weight today, but what I'm trying to do is teach you how to take these principles from the last 2 weeks and apply them to a practical situation. So if you have a very different practical situation, you can still go through this approach. Ask this question: what is signaling my body to try to protect me in this way? What is it reflecting back at me so I can see it more clearly? That is the question that we need to ask when our body is reflecting anything that may be frustrating us. Is instead of getting angry about it, we need to stop and say, what is it trying to help me see more clearly? What is it reflecting back at me? And then we can go and we can really hone in on that, and we can trust and we can support. And then our body resolves the situation for us without us having to force or do any of those things that we tend to do with weight. We don't have to do any of that because we're simply supporting our body and then allowing it to lead us through this process. So let me give you a couple of examples from my own life of how I learned this, of course, by doing it wrong. So here's three times in my life when I had struggled with weight and what I have learned from those 3 times. Okay, so the first time I struggled with weight was when I graduated from high school and went to college. I moved into the dorms and I started eating cafeteria food every day. And you know, that freshman 15 or whatever the case may be, it could be 10, it could be 40, that's not a joke. Okay, I gained a whole bunch of weight my freshman year at college. And why? What was my body trying to tell me? This is a case where it was very, very simply physical. My body was trying to tell me that all of a sudden I'd started dumping a whole bunch of stuff into it that had nothing to do with the 4 cornerstones at all. I mean, you guys, cafeteria food is everything in a cafeteria. Unless you can grab an apple, pretty much everything in a cafeteria is out of harmony with the 4 cornerstones. And that was all I ate for an entire year. And my body was letting me know that was not a good idea. That food was not in harmony with my body, and my body function changed. And it was simply reflecting back to me that what I was doing was literally physically out of harmony with my body. My second year, I moved into an apartment where I had a kitchen and I could cook, and things resolved. But that one was just so simple, you know, and we have times like that where the bottom line is what we are putting out is literally out of harmony with the function of the human body. And when we do that, the function of the human body shifts. And there are going to be consequences, and weight is just one of the consequences that can happen. But that was just a really, really simple signal for my body. Okay, another time, this was completely different. So this was when I was going through the worst of my endometriosis years, and they put me on some crazy, crazy hormone treatments. I had one where my body went from, I was in, I'm in my early 20s, okay? So it took my body from normal hormone levels to lower than postmenopausal levels in less than 30 days. And let me just tell you, the body freaks out. That is not something it wants. And then I had another time where they were trying to hormonally simulate pregnancy in me. And so then they did the opposite, and they rocketed my hormones up through the roof. And I gained 30 pounds in 1 month. My body totally freaked out. And this was when I was just starting into my healing journey. This is when I was just starting to learn about how my body worked and how to honor it. But I had this massive, massive weight gain that happened really, really fast. And it was so fast that it was really obvious what did it, that it was these hormone drugs that they'd put me on. There wasn't really any question. But because I knew exactly what the problem was and what had happened, even though I didn't continue those hormone treatments, I could not get rid of that weight. And I mean, 4 years later, I could not budge 1 stinking pound of that 30 pounds. I could not get it off. And it became, we talk about that frustration and control, it became a control issue with me. I was so mad. I was so frustrated that that drug had done that to me, and I was not in a good frame of mind about it. And I was so mad that I could not get rid of it, that I got really extreme. And I even tried starving myself, and not for a prolonged period of time, but I was really desperate, and I could not, no matter what I did, I could not budge that way. And finally, after about 4 years, I got smarter, and I backed off, and I said, if this isn't working, maybe I need to try something different. And I smartened up a little bit, and I realized that all these things we just talked about, all this dieting approach was getting me nowhere. And so I stopped. And for a while, I just kind of let it go. And then I would start to I decided to ask my body a different set of questions when I ate. And what I did is I would walk into the kitchen, and I would open the cupboard, or I would open the fridge, and I would stand there and I would say things like, what do my kidneys need me to eat today to function the way they need to function? What does my liver need me to eat today so that it can function the way it needs to function? And at that moment in time, I didn't really know the answers to those questions. It's not like I had a whole bunch of wisdom that I was drawing on. It was simply the perspective shift. Because if you open the fridge and you look at it with the concept of, I've got to lose weight, what can I eat or not eat or whatever to lose weight? It's such a tense, negative place to be. And when I switched to how can I support my body, and I didn't even realize at the time really that that's what I was doing, but I switched her perspective of how can I support my body? What does it need? And it was simply that mindset shift of I quit trying to lose or force the loss of the weight, and I decided just to support my body. And when I did that, the weight automatically started coming off. And it didn't come off fast, because one of the things is that when you're letting your body be in charge, you're again trusting your body that it's really smart and it knows what it's doing. And I had to trust that it was taking that weight off at the perfect rate for my body, whatever that was. And it took about 18 months for that weight to come off. But it came off without me trying. It came off without me dieting. It came off without me stressing, because all I had to do was get back into that place of how do I support my body? What does it need? And in that frame of mind of support and making my choices from a frame of mind of support, my body took care of the weight. So that was my second experience. Then this last year, I got another one. So this last year, I had another fairly dramatic and fairly sudden weight gain. This time, I don't know, it was about 15 pounds, but it happened pretty fast. It happened pretty fast that I gained about 15 pounds. And I was a little baffled because I looked at it and went, I have not changed one thing I'm eating. It was not that I'd quit eating the way I was supposed to, or it was I had not changed a single thing that I was eating. And yet my body was just in this kind of upward thing of it was just consistently just putting on a couple more pounds, a couple more pounds, a couple more pounds. And I'm looking at this, and I was in a better place this time because I'd learned these principles. I knew how it works. And so I was able to go much more quickly to what is my body trying to tell me? It's trying to, because my weight had been fairly consistent for quite a while. And then just all of a sudden it just starts doing this. It's like, okay, this is a message. This is a message. What is my body trying to tell me? And you guys, what it boiled down to is I'd burned out my endocrine system. I had just been pushing so hard for so long, and the stress levels had been so high that I'd burned out my adrenals. I'd burned out my endocrine system, and my body just couldn't process things the way that it needed to because I had weakened my body through my other choices. It wasn't through food choices this time, but it was through other choices. I had disrupted the function of my body through my choices. And my body was reflecting that back to me. And I had to stop and realize that I needed to take a serious look at rebuilding the health of my endocrine system. And it did not take very long at all of that for at least for the weight gain to stop, for it to plateau. It plateaued pretty quick as soon as I started really paying attention to that issue. And then as I went on, the weight has been dropping back off. But in all three of those cases, the weight, it wasn't about weight. It was about my body was using weight, or simply that you could also, if you want to look at it as a less conscious thing than that, but simply that our biochemistry is designed for weight to reflect back to us what's going on in our body. And so it's a signal. When we can just look at it as a signal, we can deal with it in such a more healthy way. So let's look at some specifics. What are some of the signals that our body is sending us if our weight is off? What are some of the common signals that our body is trying to tell us? Okay, so we're gonna talk about some physical ones, we're gonna talk about some emotional ones, and we're gonna talk about how we can deal with this. So the first one, and the most obvious, is just that our body is telling us we are eating the wrong food. Now remember here, I'm not advocating in any way dieting. I'm not advocating that we need to look at it and go, oh, I'm eating too much fat, or I'm eating too much of this, or whatever. It's time to go on a diet and cut back. That's not what I mean. That is not what I mean by eating the wrong food, okay? If we have an issue with weight, I can guarantee that there is a 4 cornerstones issue with food. Okay, so we went through those in depth last week. If you missed that, make sure you go back and listen to that class so you know what we're talking about here. But those 4 cornerstones teach us what is in harmony with the human body. And very, very few people are truly eating in harmony with their particular body. And when we are eating the wrong food, the body isn't going to work right. And one of the ways that gets reflected is weight. So let's look at a few really common examples. So cornerstone number 1 was to eat foods that are natural creations. And cornerstone number 2 was to eat foods in their correct form. Okay? If you put those two together, boy, you solve a lot of problems with weight. Here's just some of the most common ones. Artificial sugars. So we walked you through the biochemistry of that last week. That an artificial sugar as a synthetic substance is literally going to change the metabolic function of your body in a way that promotes weight gain, even though it has 0 sugars. And those artificial sugars are in everything. They aren't just in Diet Coke. They're also in your yogurt. They are in everything. You've got to really be conscious. The only way to live the 4 cornerstones is to never eat anything blind. You've got to always turn it over and be aware of what you're eating. But watch out for those artificial sugars, because they will automatically promote your metabolism to go off in a way that your body is going to store weight. Extracted sugars do also. So I would still eat a regular extracted sugar before I would eat an artificial sugar, but you can't kid yourself. If you go through the 4 cornerstones like we talked about last time, you can see where sugar fits. And it fits in a very small, narrow place with the 4 cornerstones, and yet we are eating it in a daily kind of way in our society. And that also disrupts your leptin and your insulin balances in your body in such a way that it literally tells your body it needs to store fat. So that is a very common one. Fats are huge, because not the amount of fat you're eating, the form of the fat you are eating, because everything in a processed food and everything in a restaurant, literally everything in a restaurant, is made with a form of fat that disrupts human body function. So you have to take a serious look at eating out. Where is that fitting in your lifestyle thing? Because you cannot eat in harmony with the 4 cornerstones when we eat out. And so if that is a regular, consistent part of your life, that is going to be disrupting physical function. We talked last week also about carbs, that carbs are not meant to be eaten the way we eat them now. Their form is teaching us to eat them in another way. And one of the major things that happens in the way that we are eating them in the modern diet is the huge glucose spike, which also there again throws off our endocrine system and programs our body to store fat. So you know, all of those, when you put those together, can you see how most of us, if we are living anywhere close to a normal American lifestyle, our bodies are getting inundated every single day with things that tell them to up their fat storage, even though they don't need to. This is not our natural protective mechanism. We are activating the protective mechanism by putting in foreign bodies in the human body that don't belong there. And it's turning on the protective system when it should be turned off. And that is a major issue that we're facing. And so when you can get those cornerstones in line, I mean, things just even out, because we quit throwing in things that are giving our body literally the wrong biochemical message. The other thing that we see with food, as we're not eating in harmony with the 4 cornerstones, is our food is not nutrient dense. Meaning it is not just jam-packed full of vitamins and minerals. And if you think about your body's natural protective mechanism, its job is to monitor your nutritional input, tell your body when you've gotten enough nutrition, and tell it to turn off the appetite, shut down, you've got enough nutrition, the body is safe, the body is good, and then we don't feel like eating anymore. If we are filling our bodies with very nutrient devoid food, which is what most American food is, I mean, nutrient dense food is things like blueberries and broccoli, you know, all these things that are packed with nutrition. And when we are eating this nutrient devoid processed and restaurant food on a regular basis, your body may be getting calories and your stomach may be filling up, but the message to your brain is we're still missing stuff. Like, we're still missing stuff. We're missing vitamins. We're missing minerals. We're missing nutrition. And so that protective mechanism that turns your appetite off isn't going to be working correctly. And so we have to switch back to a nutrient-dense diet. And that doesn't mean you have to live like a gerbil. That's not what that means. There's lots of really amazing, yummy food you can make that's nutrient-dense. But we have to get away from the processed and the prepared food to get back to a nutrient-dense diet. And then as we do that, then our body's actually going to be getting the signal, oh, that actually gave me what I need, we're good. And then it can turn your appetite off. So if you remember last week when we talked about leptin, that leptin's job is to go to your brain and to tell your body that you've got enough nutrition, we're good. So that hormone is called leptin, okay? But when we are eating a modern American diet, leptin no longer, our brain doesn't see leptin correctly, and we get the response that we're starving, and that's why those fat stores just keep going and keep going and keep going. But I want you to stop and think for a second again about the diet mentality. If the reason you are holding on to weight is because your leptin messaging is off and your body thinks it's starving, what's your body going to do when you diet? It's going to go into full panic mode, full panic mode. Because if it thinks it's starving and all of a sudden you decide to quit eating or to quit eating very much, it's going to do everything it can to submarine the whole thing. It's going to undermine you. Your body's going to undermine your diet at every chance it gets, because it's in this programmed place of we aren't getting enough, we aren't getting enough, we aren't getting enough. And so if you give it less, it is going to fight against you with everything you've got. So if instead of trying to eat any less, you just switch to trying to up the nutrition of what you eat, then your body gets the opposite message and it goes, oh, we've got enough, and it'll calm down. And so switching your diet to be more nutrient dense and not worrying about trying to reduce quantities at all is so much more supportive of your body, because instead of working against it, then you're working for it and helping it switch its messaging system instead of trying to work against it. So that's a lot more helpful. Okay, the other cornerstone I want to talk about in reference with weight is cornerstone number 4, eating by the sweat of our brow. Okay, this is hugely helpful with weight, and here is why. Our bodies are programmed to equate eating with activity. If you think historically, there were no refrigerators, there were no cupboards, there was no food just sitting there. There were no drive-thrus. There was never food just sitting there waiting for you, historically. So if you wanted food, here were your options. You could go out and you could scavenge for it. You could go out and you could hunt for it. You could take food that you had stored, whether that be your grains or, your squash or whatever. You could take food that you had stored and prepare it. But eating was always equivalent with activity. It was an active thing. So we did an activity before we ate, and then because of that, when we ate, it gave our body the signal that it now had more stores of nutrition and it was ready to be active again. And so it created a cycle of activity. Food created a cycle of activity. It was a proactive thing. I want you to think about how we eat now. We live in a lifestyle of a constant sedentary buffet. Think about the places we eat. We eat while driving in the car. We eat while sitting in front of the television. We eat while sitting at a stadium watching a sports game. We eat while we work on our computer. We eat at work in the middle of a business lunch so that we can eat and work at the same time. Can you see what we've done? We've shot ourselves in the foot twice, because not only now are we not preparing our food because we are eating it in completely instant sedentary ways where it's just handed to us and we don't even move, we just sit and eat it. Not only that, which we talked about more last week, but we've also taken the activity off of the other end of the food, because now we eat it, and because we weren't active to get it, it's actually creating a sedentary cycle, and now we don't feel like moving after we eat, and we've created the exact opposing cycle in our modern culture of what food is supposed to do. Food is supposed to be active before and after. We have made it sedentary before and after. And that's literally changing the biochemical way our body responds to food. And that's getting in our way with weight. So can you see how when you take those 4 cornerstones, when you really start to get into all the details, most people, when they really apply the 4 cornerstones, weight takes care of itself. It just does. Because we're eating food that supports normal body function. And when normal body function kicks in, weight takes care of itself. And so think about those and see if there's a big gaping hole there for you anywhere, where there might be a blind spot that you haven't realized that you've been sabotaging yourself by missing one of those cornerstones or something. See if there's a hole there that stands out to you. But as we fill those and as we bring the food back into harmony, weight really is self-regulatory. Okay, but there are some cases when weight is an emotional issue, and there are many, many cases when it's both. In fact, probably most of the time it's both. So we need to address both, but let's talk about some of the emotional issues that play into weight and food. Okay, let's talk about emotional eating. Emotional eating is by definition using food as a drug. So we are feeling something we don't want to feel, and that could be physical, emotional, mental, any of those. We are feeling something we don't want to feel, and we learn how to use food as a drug to numb what we are feeling. This is really, really common. In fact, there's probably not any of us that don't do this ever, because when a baby cries, a baby is fed, and that's how it should be. That is not a bad thing. That actually develops a lot of healthy neural pathways in the brain. It's a good thing. And a lot of bad things happen if that response is not met appropriately. But we learn very early to equate food with soothing, food with being comforted, food with being better. And the way the human body has designed that to work is that there was a human attached to that food, right? It's coming from the mother. And so what's supposed to happen is that the majority of that emotion gets transferred to the person providing the food rather than the food itself. That's the ideal thing, that a baby learns in its really subconscious, deep mental programming, that I cry, I'm hungry, and this human fixes it. They pull me close, they hold me close, they give me what I need, I feel better. And so hopefully, ideally, what happens is our connection happens to the person, but we've separated that one now too in our society. As we have wanted to separate effort from eating, we've also wanted to separate effort from feeding. And there's no joke, there's no way around the fact that breastfeeding is a lot of effort. And we have separated that. And that certainly is not the only reason for our emotional eating, not even close, but you can see how that can happen, that as we have times in our life when our emotional needs are not met by a human being, we find other ways to meet them. And because food is such a part of our very early life from the beginnings, it's very easy for us to form that emotional attachment with food. I feel better when I eat. I feel better when I eat this particular thing because we have a memory attached to it. It's connected to grandma, or it's connected to this time when this terrible thing happened and mommy made me cookies, or it's connected. We have these memories where food has been used as a drug to literally, to emotionally comfort us instead of being comforted by a human being. And in our culture, that happens a lot. Food is also used as a reward, which has now been psychologically examined a lot and been shown to be a terrible, terrible thing for long-term health when the brain equates food and reward. That is just documented up the wazoo in psychological circles, but we still do it. Schools still do it. It drives me bonkers because it's so documented. But when we use food as an emotional coping mechanism and as a reward, we create these wired pathways in our brain of this is a source of comfort. So if that exists for you, what do we do about it? What do we do about it? Well, the main thing is that we have to look at what happens right before. So if you have a situation and you find yourself going, oh, I need some chocolate, okay, that's not really because chocolate's going to fix the situation. That's emotional eating. We have an association that, oh my gosh, I'm feeling stressed, or I'm feeling anxious, or I'm feeling hurt, or I'm feeling scared, or whatever, and I'm going to go to this thing that I have learned to equate to comfort, and I'm going to eat it, and it's going to go inside me, and somehow, for a little while, it's just going to numb everything, and I'm going to feel better. But it never solves the underlying problem. It's just a Band-Aid. And so if you find yourself in that situation, oh, I've got to go get some pizza, Oh, I need some chocolate. Whatever your comfort food might be, back up one step and see if you can identify the thought that preceded the thought, I need chocolate. That is what needs to be healed. That is what your body is actually trying to bring your attention to. Was it the thought that appeared? I mean, there's millions of them. Was it, oh, I'm never going to be good enough. I'm not going to succeed at this. I know it. I'm never going to get this. I'm never going to pull it together. I need chocolate. Was it, oh my gosh, I'm so busy. I don't have even a second to breathe. I need chocolate. Was it, oh my gosh, my kid, this thing is happening with my kid and I don't know what to do and blah, blah, blah. I need chocolate. It's not usually that conscious. We actually aren't even aware of the thought that preceded the I need chocolate. But what we have to do is we have to stop and back up a step and start stopping at I need chocolate, freezing in our place, backing it up, and figuring out what just preceded that. Because that is what your body is trying to tell you needs to be healed. That is where the false belief is lying. That is where the memory that's sabotaging you is filed. That is whatever it is, that is where it is. And so emotional eating, as difficult as it can be, is actually a great signaler. Because if you can figure out what it is you tend to go to for emotional eating, and then every time that happens, stop, back up. Oh my goodness, the things you're going to uncover and be able to heal. And then instead of just numbing them, we can actually heal the underlying issue and not need the chocolate anymore. Okay, so that's one approach. The other is simply looking at these issues where we feel the need for protection from something that scares us. And that is stuff that requires deep emotional work, where we really have to work on uncovering our buried wounds, our festering frustrations, our deepest fears, and start to be able to deal with those so that we don't need this protective wall of weight around us anymore. We feel safe as we are. And that is a process of emotionally healing. But I want you to think about that and look at that. And can you see how if you combined the 4 cornerstones to help you straighten out and find where there might be a hole in what you're giving your body physically. And then we use the other 4 keys of healing, learning how to identify and clear our emotional and mental junk, learning how to use these additional physical tools, and then moving to that place of trusting our body implicitly. As our teacher, we can heal. Whether that is weight, whether that is anything else you are facing. I hope this example of walking through the process of weight helps you see how we don't really need a supplement. We don't need a meal replacement. We don't need a diet. Those things don't fix anything. They cover, they hide, they mimic, they trick us into thinking we're being productive. But whatever is at the bottom that our body was trying to show us is still sitting there. It's still sitting there unresolved. No matter what of these products and diets and things we put on top, the problem is sitting there unresolved. Whereas if we can take these 4 keys of healing and we can take these 4 cornerstones, we start unraveling it's like the briars, if you think of like briar rabbit and these briar woods of all these thorny, sticky things. We all have those briars in us and around us of this stuff that is in our way of being able to move forward in a healthy and happy way. And if instead of putting some kind of patch on the briars to try to get so that they don't poke so much, we start pulling the weeds, then we have free passage forward. Then we can move forward uninhibited. And instead of just not being in so much pain from whatever was poking us, trying to get our attention, we've actually cleared And then you've got this whole new field of beautiful flowers that you can plant, and you can have a whole new beautiful place to live. It's such a deeper way of looking at our problems, of looking at our challenges, and being able to create a new us and a new life and a new way of interacting with the world, instead of just constantly trying to patch and band-aid, but just staying in that state, but staying stuck in the place that we are. And these principles that I've taught you in January really can help you go through this process, whatever your situation may be. The power of principles is that they work anywhere. If I tried to tell any of you what to eat, or tried to tell all of you what to eat or what to do, 90% of you, it wouldn't work because it doesn't fit you, but a principle fits always. A principle fits always. And so you can take these principles and they will help you through any situation that you're dealing with. I want to read you a quote. Here, let me see if I can pull this up on my phone really fast. Sorry, we've got, so I have a separate Facebook group for the people in Simply Divine Healing. And this is what I posted today, because this is really how I have come to feel about healing. It says, sometimes when our life falls apart, it is because it is not held together with consciousness. I would replace that with the word truth. Sometimes when our life falls apart, it is because it is not held together with truth. It is held together with illusion. And so it crumbles. And what is left is actually a clearer vision of what is real and of value. So many have found their life path only after what they had formerly perceived as their life crumbles to dust. In other words, it is the illusion of our life that crumbles, leaving only reality in its place. And that's by Max Strom. And that is what this beautiful healing process is. We have all these illusions, we have all these weeds, we have all of these things that we have come to accept as just a part of our lives. And yet sometimes an illness, a physical illness, a mental illness, a crisis or whatever brings us to a point that this life that we thought was what it was supposed to be crumbles. And we have to find what is the real me under this? What is my real life purpose under this? What is the reality that I had completely missed before because of this illusion I had built? And healing is the process of allowing our illnesses and our challenges to shine a light on those illusions and wipe them away, so that we can build up the reality and the truth of who we really are. So I want to open this up for questions, and I want to invite you guys. You can ask questions on any of the 3 classes. If you missed one of the other classes and you've got questions on those, I want to open it up for any questions that you have. But before I do that, I want to tell you this January, these 3 January classes have been an interesting experience for me. This is something this is talking about things at a much deeper level than I ever have before, at a much more personal level than I ever had before. And it was a very uncomfortable place for me to go. But I felt very strongly that it was something that I needed to do. And it has been interesting for me to see the responses. As I have taught these classes, I know that these principles are true. I know that. I feel them in my deepest soul. I know they are true. But this isn't the easiest path. Band-aids are faster, quicker, and easier than real healing. And that's why Band-aids are so popular in all their many forms in the health world. This is not necessarily the easy path, but it is such a powerful path. And I honestly wasn't sure how this would be received. I was a bit nervous, to be honest. And as I've gotten responses for a lot of you, I have found out that there are a lot more people than I thought that have needed this, that are ready for this. I'm not the only one going through these things. I'm not the only one who is searching for a better and a deeper and a higher way to embrace and work through my challenges. There are a lot of you out there that are in that same place, and I appreciate those of you who've told me how you felt as you have gone through this class. But this is growing into something a lot bigger than what I had thought it would be, and I still don't know what this is going to become. But I have definitely felt that, you know, there is a community of us who are in this place of searching for real healing, real growth, real transformation, of leaving behind some of these shortcuts and band-aids, and really seeking for what will lift us up and really help us in the long term. And so I just want to make sure that all of you are aware that for any of you for which it is helpful, this is just the first 3 classes of 28 classes. I wanted to make these first 3 classes free so that they could be available to anyone. And they will. They'll still, I'm going to leave these 3 classes up through the end of January. So if there's people you need to share them with, people who need them, make sure that they get a chance to watch them. But there's still 25 more classes in this process that I'm calling Simply Divine Healing, where we are going to go through the process of literally walking through together, of applying the 4 cornerstones of health and the 4 keys of healing to whatever is your individual situation, your individual challenge, and going through all the mechanics of how do we really identify these emotional issues? How do we get rid of them? How do we really do these? How do the 4 cornerstones really work in real everyday life? What are the physical tools that we can use to strengthen and build up our body? And we're going to go through all of that all the way from now till August. And as we have gone through these free January classes, I've set a very specific intention for this 7-month program and what I would like it to become, so that it can be even more than what my original intention was. So if you feel drawn to that, if that calls to you, if you are one of the people who what we are going to be doing in the next 7 months is what you need, please go to simplydivinehealing.com, check out the program, see if that is something, if you would like to continue this process for most of this year. We are going to be doing this on a weekly basis. Now, I think that's all I need to say. I'm really grateful for those of you who've joined in the live classes. It's always fun to have the real life interaction and response. So let's just open this up at this point for questions. Any questions you have, just feel free to unmute yourself, and we'll go ahead and chat about whatever you want.
Angie, can you hear me?
I can't hear you, Rebecca.
Oh.
I can see you, but I can't hear you.
Oh, weird. Okay. Not sure how to change that. Oh, it won't work.
Okay. Anna can hear you. I can't hear you. Okay, try again.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I was just curious. I am currently trying the keto diet, and I don't like all the yucky sugars they're suggesting. So
all the yucky what?
Artificial sweeteners that they suggest. So I've written off pretty much all sugar alcohols, and I'm just curious what your thoughts on monk fruit and stevia. Maybe you already addressed that. I didn't catch you talking about it.
Okay, so stevia in its pure form is a total 4 cornerstones appropriate food. So, but by that means you have to buy the green powder in the health food store, because one of the great ironies is it's illegal to sell stevia in the grocery store, but they can sell the chemical modified version of stevia in the grocery store. So if you find stevia in the grocery store, it isn't real stevia because it's actually illegal. So you have to go to a health food store or a supplement store, and you can buy it as a supplement. So that would be the green stuff. And that's just a ground up leaf. That's pretty much as good as you can get. So, so yeah, stevia is fine. Monk fruit, I looked at that one, and it's an extract. So it doesn't fit the 4 cornerstones. However, it may still be closer than other options. Like I would still do that over a artificial sugar any day. Do you know what I mean? So that's kind of where that falls. Stevia is totally 4 cornerstones appropriate. Monk fruits over a little ways, but does that help?
Are you saying the stevia in the drop form really isn't even stevia?
Well, that's a stevia extra. It's almost like a stevia tincture if you're getting it in a pure form. So that would still be okay if as long as they haven't extracted or modified it. But most places are modifying and taking out just a particular component of the stevia, and that has a different effect on the body than the whole plant. So you would need, if you're looking at an extract, you need to see whether it's a whole leaf extract or whether it's an extract of an extract, I guess. Does that make sense?
Right. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, who else has a question? Wow, everyone's really quiet tonight.
Angie, it's Trisha. Can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
So when you started your opening the fridge and opening the cupboard and asking your body what it needed you to give it to function correctly, how long did it take you to hear the actual answers?
A really long time, I'll be honest. When I did, and some of that's because I've had to figure all this out on my own. Do you know what I mean? It's taken a lot longer than it needed to. But when I first did that, it was mostly a logical process. Like I could look in the fridge and just know that's pretty much going to be a fruit, a vegetable. Do you know what I mean? Like there's some of that's just kind of a duh at this point. And that was more what I was doing. Now, as I've gotten better at listening to my body, here's some of the things I pay attention to. I pay attention to the first thing that grabs my eye. So not my taste buds, but where do my eyes go? Like when I walk into a grocery store, where do they go first? And obviously I'm talking about in the produce section, not the bakery, but where there's something about, I found that even when I'm using herbs and stuff, it's like somehow your attention will go where it needs to go if you just kind of let go. If you just let go and watch where your focus goes, that can be a key. I've also sometimes I'll just literally, I now will feel something pulling, like it's almost like it has a magnetic effect. And so if I ever feel that where I walk past a food and it's like your body kind of almost just leans into it, I pay really close attention to that. So those are some of the things. It was interesting. I went to the grocery store this week and I just went into the produce section with just really that I was in a good place that day. I was centered. I was in a really good place. And I just went into the grocery store with just the intention of knowing what I needed to get. And it was just kind of interesting to have that experience of just walking past and just paying attention. Where did my attention go? Where did I feel drawn? What things literally felt like they had a little bit of a spotlight on them, or they had, does that make sense? Like those are some of the things I pay attention to. Sometimes things will actually feel different to me in my hands. Like if I pick up, I would, kind of funny in today's class to call it weight, but I'll have times when I will pick up something and it's just like, it just feels empty. Like it doesn't feel like it has much weight to it. And then you'll pick up something else and it's like, oh, like that's got something I need. It feels like it's got substance to it. You can, here's an exercise for all of you guys. If you want to try this, go to the grocery store and pick up an energy drink can, like a Monster energy drink can. Just hold it in your hands. If you just hold that in your hands and you just pay attention, your hands will actually start to hurt. If you just stand there and hold it, you'll feel it. You can feel the repulsion from your body. You will feel your hands start to hurt. So sometimes you can actually just hold foods and start to pay attention. How do they feel in your hands? Does it feel like, oh my gosh, there's a part of me, I just found something that's supposed to, or is it just like, no, I've got no connection to that whatsoever? So those are some of the things that you can start to do to just start to experience how your body can communicate with food. Is that helpful at all, Tricia?
Yes, that was awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Will you kind of, I don't know if I'm trying to get too specific, but the cornerstone that talks about eating foods in their natural quantities, and you gave the example of the green smoothie. So can you kind of expound on that a little bit? Like, how do I know if it's too much or too little? Does that make sense?
Well, that's probably the cornerstone that is, I don't want to necessarily use the word least precise, but you know what I mean? It's mostly just starting to look at, okay, here's another example. Let's look at nuts, okay? So nuts are a food that people are using more and more as a substitute. So they're being used as a flour substitute because we're trying to go low carb. They're being used as a milk substitute because we're now drinking them as nut milks. And then we're using them as healthy snacks. And so nuts have gone way up in our consumption. So stop and just think, and we have to use our imagination since we don't live in the wilderness. But if you just use your imagination and think, if you were just to go into a garden or, you know, some kind of thing where things were naturally growing, are nuts going to be a hugely abundant food, or are they going to be a more sparse food? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What would you say?
I would say sparse.
Yeah. They don't grow in huge quantities like some other things do. So like even I was able to go to a farm in Hawaii once where they were growing all these natural, you know, and there's a macadamia nut tree here and there, but it's not a forest unless someone plants it, right? They're sparse. And so they're one of those foods that we have now taken out of proportion. And there's starting to be negative consequences because if you just look in the natural environment, they're not something we're not supposed to eat, but they don't grow readily enough to really be a flour substitute. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah.
Like that is not how nature provides that food. And so then you can just look at that and go, okay, if I'm eating them that way, I'm probably eating them out of balance. Whereas, here's another example. If you think about coconut, if you go to a place where coconut grows naturally, it's everywhere. Like coconuts are they're everywhere. That plant just grows, you know. And so there, you know, if you're in a tropical climate, you're going to find coconuts on the floor everywhere you walk. So to me, that says coconut is in that kind of a place is meant to be a basis of a diet. Nuts are not.
Yeah.
Does that help?
With coconut, because its natural form wouldn't be a flour, would you say coconut flour is not a good choice?
I still think that's, were you there in the class when we talked about the spectrum?
Yes.
On the spectrum. So a lot of times we want to label foods as all good or all bad, but what we want to look at is from the 4 cornerstones, where do they fall from their purest form to their most adulterated form? And if I need to use a flour substitute, I think that coconut flour is way closer to this end than most of the other things that are used as flour substitutes.
Right, for sure. So I keep getting stuck on like thinking of my garden. I'm like, well, zucchini grows like crazy, but in the summer. So you know what I mean? So like seasonally, but it's available now. because it's a plant that grows a ton, is it something like, yeah, go for it on the zucchini? Or, you know, I mean, obviously I'll only eat what I feel like eating, but.
I'll be honest with you, seasonal eating is not something I have pulled off yet. I believe in it absolutely as a principle, and I would really like to get there, but I am not there yet. My kids are still eating bananas.
Oh yeah.
So getting back to local seasonal eating is so far from where we are that we have got a whole lot of learning and a whole lot of practice to get there.
Yes.
I'm not there. My sights are set there, but I'm not there. So that's one I'm still.
And I always wondered if that was more, I mean, I know the scriptures always apply to us now, but food is available to us now where it wouldn't have been before.
Well, it's interesting if you look at scriptures, if you're looking at DNC 89, it talks about in season.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's there is something.
But I would just assume because they couldn't preserve like we could, or ship it from other countries. You know what I mean? And maybe that's the whole thing. We shouldn't ship it from other countries. I don't know. But that's kind of where I thought, like, maybe it's just safer to eat what's available and not try to store things, or I don't know.
Yeah. That's one of those where there again, you have to look at on a spectrum. Do you know what I mean? As you're taking one step at a time to get things more and more in harmony, I think the seasonal thing is probably the last step for most of us.
Yeah,
it's kind of that last big jump, and one probably the most challenging, because to really do that, you've got to produce a lot of your own food, honestly. And so it's one of those last as we start turning our backyards into homesteads,
right,
and things. But I know the principle is true. But I cannot yet live as an example of how to do it perfectly because I'm not there.
You do a great job being a good example on all the other levels, though.
Well, we'll take that for now.
Okay, thank you.
Veggies during the winter time because we can't store veggies.
Well, there's some veggies that do store. Like I have a whole basement full of winter squash and pumpkins and potatoes and onions, and there are veggies that do store. And then I've got all my fermented veggies, which are a natural form of fermenting veggies. And so I'm a little closer on that one. I'm not all the way, but there again, to me, the ideal that I have sitting out here as my long-term goal is to get to the point that between naturally storable food and fermented food, I could do winter. That's like my long-term goal.
No fresh veggies for the winter.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think one that's just a constant that I would always keep as a resource is sprouts. Because that's something that is fully sustainable in the winter. Do you know what I mean? Even, you go back in history and that could have been done to help improve nutrition. So to me, if you're going to look at a Four Cornerstones way to have fresh food during the winter, it would actually be sprouting.
Yeah.
And this winter, we have for the first time our winter garden box of lettuce. So this is the first winter we're trying that. So we are far from pros, but we're playing with it. Anyway.
I have one more question.
Okay.
Do you have a resource or somewhere we can go to find grains that are more true to the way they're supposed to be grown?
Yeah, if you go to azurestandard.net, so Azure Standard is like the health food store on wheels.
Okay.
The way their website works is you go in, you order your stuff, and then once a month they send out a truck. You go meet the truck. They have drop-offs all over the country. The closest one to me is just at a gas station in Brigham City, and you meet the truck and you pick it up. And they have got, it's like the health food store version of food storage and everything you could possibly imagine.
Oh, cool.
So every grain you could ever want, you can get there. So some of my more unusual grains, that's where I've gotten them.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
I have a question. So just going back to the quantity that we were talking about, how you kind of gauge quantity. What do you do with animal products? Because like a dairy farm or a cow, or do you know what I mean? Like I can look up how many eggs a chicken typically lays, but how many you know what I mean? So
animal products are mostly fixed by sweat of your brow. What could you eat if you had to raise it or hunt it? That fixes animal products. Where we get in trouble with animal products again is the grocery store concept, where we can go in and we can buy any amount in any quantity anytime we get. Whereas one of the things we talk about in my full class, we go into this one in huge amount of depth in my online academy. But one of the things you can think about is which takes more effort, to go out and pick something from your garden or find, kill, butcher a buffalo? Which takes more work?
well, obviously to kill buffalo.
To kill the buffalo. So nature has set it up so that animal products are the most labor intensive foods. They are the most labor. I milk goats every day, I can tell you that. Animal products are one of the most labor intensive foods, and they are that way on purpose. Because if you use your own labor, you only use animal products to the degree that you truly need them, because they take so much work. So they only get out of balance when we don't have to invest any labor. So the thing with those is to stop and look about and say, okay, if I had to raise my own, how much work would that be worth to me? Do you know what I mean? How much do I really need them? How much could I do in my own kind of world? What would be a reasonable amount? And then you can start to sort through animal products pretty fast. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks.
Can I just share kind of an interesting story based on what you were talking about?
Uh-huh.
You can hear me?
Yeah.
Just the last couple of years, I've been in therapy, working through addiction recovery with my husband. So a little piece. But I've been working with this amazing woman who's been overweight most of her life, and she's probably at least 400 to 500 pounds. But as I have watched her fix kind of her faulty core beliefs and learn truths about herself and her worth, I've watched her lose about 130 pounds. And not only that, like, she's been kind of a hoarder, and she can't even see her house, because it's buried, and her house is getting cleaner. She is like releasing not just her physical weight, but the weight she carries in her home. And it's just been cool to see. I mean, she's also working with nutritionists, but the whole package is what I feel like is healing her. And she's such a bright light now, whereas before she just was a corner, hid in the corner and disappeared. And so I've totally seen what you are talking about. It's really cool.
Thanks for sharing that. That's a great example. Thank you. Hey, any other questions?
Angie, I had a question. You hear me?
Yes.
Christine?
I don't know who this is, but I can hear you.
Christine Summers. I talked to you a while ago from Roseanne's class.
Oh, uh-huh.
Anyway, I had a question. I talked to you about going on raw foods for deep healing or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And you said like to stay on it a month or two, but not for a long time. But could you use green drinks during that time? Because with a lot of the raw food programs, it says that I know you're not a proponent of the green drinks, but I wondered in that case if that would make a difference.
Well, a couple things. First of all, I did the raw diet for a month or two. That doesn't mean that's the right time for someone else. That's what I did. But when I needed to do some deep healing, but that doesn't mean I would never prescribe a time frame for someone else, because there again, I would want you to listen to your body.
Right.
But as far as I did when I did raw, I did try to keep things still in the best proportions I could with what nature. So I didn't do a heavy nut diet. I didn't do a lot of green smoothies. I have, people ask me, where does juicing fit? Like that's a question I
Right.
get a lot because you're extracting it from its original form. So when you talk about juicing, the spectrum becomes really important. So at this end of the spectrum, you've got your whole foods, your fruits and your vegetables. And at this end of the spectrum, you've got your dead, pasteurized, chemical-laden apple juice at Walmart, right?
Right.
Okay. And so people are like, well, where does my home pressed juice fit? And the truth is it's in the middle. Because when you make your own juice, yes, you have extracted it from its original thing, so you've moved over a little bit. However, when you juice yourself, you only can remove the insoluble fiber. You can't remove the water-soluble fiber. So that's why your home pressed juices aren't clear.
Right.
And so you can't get it all out. So it's a lot closer than this. It's still alive, which is one of the huge pluses, right? And the advantage of juicing over smoothies is that, the advantage of, okay, so let's talk about, so we've got whole foods that we talked about with the apple, how it's in the form that it's released exactly how it should be, right? When we grind something in a smoothie, the argument is, well, the fiber is still there. So that's better than a juice, okay? And there's logic to that, but the problem with that is that the purpose of juicing is when we have an impaired digestive system, our body can't extract nutrition from fiber. So it can't pull it out. And so the logic for juicing is that when we're in a healing process, if our guts are damaged and they can't be pulling the nutrition out like they should, when we juice, we've made that nutrition instantly available. There's no work. Your body has no work. So like you literally can pour in straight nutrition and your body can just, and you'll feel it. Like if you do one of those fresh, it's like 10 minutes later and you're like, whoa, you can feel that your body got that fast.
Right.
And so I honestly don't see a huge place for smoothies because if your body can digest the whole food and all that fiber, eat the whole food. If your body can't digest it, you need to go all the way to juicing.
I know the one book that I have, the lady would say, juice your apples and your greens, stuff like that, and then you can put a fruit in with it. And then put it in and blend it with whatever fruit or a banana if you want.
And there again, you can see it depends on what your goals are, and you can your body and just think about the spectrum. But like we do drink smoothies at my house, but we're doing fermented smoothies is what I'm using it to get fermented foods into my kids. And I will add a little bit of fruit to the smoothie because then I can get fermented food in my kids. And to me, that's a bigger win than the fact that I've blended up a little bit of fruit. So when I weigh those, I'm like, that's worth blending a little bit of fruit to get the fermented food in my kids. So I do smoothies as a way to do that, but I personally don't do just grind up my fresh food smoothies. Now that doesn't mean you can't, you need to see where you are and what your body's needs are. But I think for most people, we're better off eating either the whole food or juicing, depending on what your need is.
Okay.
That's my 2 cents. You can.
And then I had another comment on the DNC on the fruits and the food and the seasons thereof. And one time I was studying that, a thought came to me, and I don't know, you may think this is way out there, but not only, I know we talk about foods, eating them in the season, like winter, summer, or whatever, but I also thought, well, maybe that is talking about the actual food. And in its season is when it's ripe, when it's got a lot of enzymes in it, when it's more fresh. Not so much that, so a pineapple, if you're eating it in its true form, then it's in its season. And not so much that it's, summer or winter. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but.
It could be. Scriptures always have multiple layers of meaning. So they're fun to look at all the ways that they could be interpreted. Thank you. Hey.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Okay, do we have any more questions? We get everybody? All right, well, that is it. I I will send out an email with the recording of this so that you've got that, or if there's people you need to share it with. If you haven't joined the Facebook Simply Divine Eating community, that's a great place for us to be able to continue to ask questions, share successes, share ideas, all those kinds of things that go on in there. So that's another great resource for you as well. And then if you would like to join in any additional classes, I'd love to see any of you. I hope this has been helpful. I hope this has provided the insight that you need to help in conquering your own challenges that you have, and doing it in a way that really lifts and supports your body. So thank you, and I will see you later.